Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to this week's Friday Reads, where I talk about everything that I read in the last week, what I'm currently in the middle of, and what I think I'm going to be getting to next week. And starting with The Brightest Spell by Shannon McGuire, I finished this book. It is the 11th book in the October Day series, which is an adult urban fantasy series which follows our main character of October Day, who is half fae, half human, and a knight in the fairy realms, and she tends to get thrown at these really oddball problems because she is best suited to solve them. And in this book, a very powerful pureblood fae comes to see Toby and asks Toby to find their daughter. And Toby says no. And so this pureblood fae, who very powerful, takes two members of Toby's family and says, you can have them back when I have my daughter. And so Toby goes searching for their daughter. And the story goes from there. And this is really interesting because this is a book that I have extremely mixed feelings about. It is such a good book for this series because we're like not only having a ton of reveals and these really interesting character development and relationship development of people that like Toby doesn't normally interact with, but like these reveals, and just we're laying down the groundwork for more reveals, and it's just so interesting. Like, this is a reread for me, so like as I'm reading it, I was like taking pictures of certain passages so that I have them for when in the later part of the series and we get to some of these other reveals, like I have it on hand so that I can just send it to my buddy who I'm buddy reading with and be like, see, it was in this book. So like it's so good for all of that. But that pureblood fae that comes to see Toby as an antagonist is like my most hated antagonist, in a way that like I really struggle to deal with just all the emotions that this character incites. Like, I hate them really, really so much. And so it's a struggle because then I have to deal with those emotions, and like it's just a little bit too much for me. Additionally, when we get to the end, we have to deal with that character again, but also there's like a gut punch of an emotional scene. And I'm just like, man, having these like right on top of each other is just really rough. And so it's the kind of book where it's really, really good, and I never want to read it because like I don't want to have to deal with that kind of stuff. So I actually considered skipping it, but I just decided to go ahead and read it. And it was a good, like, it's good to have all of those other things with like the relationship building and the reveals and all of that stuff. But yeah, the emotions were really hard to deal with. So I ended up giving this 4 stars, and that's not necessarily a reflection on how well this book is executed, but more like my own personal experience with it. And then I did go ahead and pick up In the Ballroom with the Candlestick by Diana Peterfreund, the third and final book in the Clue Mystery Trilogy, which is a young adult murder mystery trilogy. And so this is actually really interesting. This is set at a boarding school. We have like a whole ensemble cast that you would recognize from like the Clue board game. So we have like a Plum character. His name is Phineas Plum, for example. And this is also a book that I have very mixed feelings about, because if you look at this as a trilogy, like this trilogy as like one overarching storyline, this is actually really well done. But as an individual book, it's not very strong as an independent book. So I would advocate that if you're going to read these, plan to read them pretty close together for 2 reasons. The first is that there are callbacks in this book to things that happen in the first and second book. And if you don't remember the details of those events, it's going to be harder to understand the impact of those callbacks. I had some of those issues, and it was not great. It's not like you need to remember a ton of tiny details, but like it's been long enough since I read the second book that I was starting to lose some of the like middle details, not the big stuff, but like the like important but kind of more minor stuff. The other reason is, again, this reads really well as one storyline. When you look at this book as like the third act of a single story, it is really, really well done. You see what the author is doing with these characters and like asking the audience, do you really know these characters? And all of that kind of stuff. And I think it's done extremely well. But if you look at it as an individual story, like each of these books has their own individual plot line. And the first book, it was a pretty strong plot line. The second book was like more middling to weak. And this third book is just straight up a weak plot line. It's just not really well done on an individual basis. And so I think that if you read them as individual books, you're just not going to be happy with this story. And so, yeah, read it as a trilogy. It'll go better, I'm sure. Now, I still really enjoyed it because, like, it is exactly kind of what I was expecting. It was still, like, almost trashy reality TV show, although occasionally there was some stuff that was, like, so over the top, it felt almost soap opera. And I really liked all like the little homages to the Clue movie. So for example, this is dealing with prom, and I mean, like, the plot line of this is just there's a murderer, another one, and so we have to find out who did it, right? But this one is dealing with more with prom, and the live band that they hire is the singing Telegrams, which doesn't mean anything if you're not familiar with the movie, but is a really nice touch if you are. So I still enjoyed this. I don't, like, it was one of those where the author didn't quite stick the landing, but I still found it to be very enjoyable. So I ended up giving this 4 stars. I know that I'm going to reread this in the future, and I think that how I'm going to do it is I'm going to watch the movie Clue, and then I'm going to read like the 3 books in this trilogy. Maybe not completely back to back, but more or less back to back. And I think that I will enjoy it even more with that. And then I picked up and finished The Kinsmen Universe by Ilona Andrews. And this is a short story novella collection, adult science fiction. It's all set in the same universe called The Kinsmen Universe. The 3 stories are Silent Blade, Silver Shark, and A Mere Formality. All 3 of those books, I believe, can be found on their website for free. I do pick up physical copies of books like this, especially if it's somebody like Ilona Andrews, because first off, I want to support this author because I want them to continue to write for as long as they're willing to write. So I will pick up physical copies of those kinds of books, but also because, like, I don't do especially well reading things that are like books that are on a website, on a screen. It's just, I don't do so well. So I picked up the physical copy, even though, yes, it is all available for free. And this book really drove home some of the issues that I have with Ilona Andrews. Now, I'm going to be upfront that I still think Ilona Andrews is amazing as an author, and I will pretty much always pick up their stuff because I know that even if it's not their best work, I'm still going to enjoy it. But they do fall into a few tropes that I'm like just a little bit tired of seeing. So having the extremely competent female lead, and with the male interest that is always kind of a jerk alpha kind of dude that she's got to work around. It was not completely that, but it was that to varying degrees, which I'm just like, I'm kind of, it's not that like I don't necessarily mind that, but like as part of a rotation, not the only thing. And that's a lot of what we got in these 3 stories. And I don't always love romantic short stories because I don't think we have enough time for the chemistry to properly develop in the way that I like it, which I knew going into this, but I was hoping that these did not have a strong romantic element, but they all did. And the other thing I will say is that I felt like we didn't get as strong of a world building element that we normally get from Ilona Andrews. One of the things that they do so well is these really well thought out, incredibly interesting worlds. And while I think that this world has the potential to be very interesting, we just didn't get enough information about it, which makes sense because these are short stories and novellas. We can't explore it in the same way, but I did feel that lack while I was reading it. Now, that being said, I'm like hypercritical of them only because like I've read really amazing books from this author. And so like, you know, like this is like one of their weaker works, I would say personally for me, but it's still a 3.75. It's still a good read. I still had a good time. So do with that what you will. I ended up giving it 3.75 stars. So for the books that I'm in the middle of, I did go ahead and start Voyage of the Basilisk by Marie Brennan. This is the third book in the Memoirs of Lady Trent series, which is an adult fantasy series that is on a completely different world than our own, but still feels historical because it feels Victorian-esque. It's very interesting. But this series is following Isabella Camhurst as she is on her journey to becoming a world-renowned dragon naturalist. Now, these are memoirs. That's like what it's supposed to be. It's a fictional memoir. And so the narrator is Isabella Camhurst later in life when she is known as Lady Trent, which is just so good because then we get all the narration and little asides from, you know, Lady Trent as she's like looking back on her past adventures. It's so good. I have read the first chapter, just the prologue. So I'm on page 13. Basically, I picked this up and then I got extremely busy, and the little bit of downtime that I had, I was just like, I do not have the mental capacity to pick this up and try to deal with the writing style because, again, Victorian-esque. So I did read that first prologue. I'm really excited to get into this. I just need to wait until I have I'm not quite so tired, I think, is really what I'm going to have to wait for. But I did start it and I'm excited to read more. And then I did also pick up Night in Silence by Shauna Maguire, the 12th book in the October Days series. And I picked this up because my buddy started it. And so, she started it and immediately started sending me notes. So I was just like, okay, I should, this is a really consequential book. So I should probably, I think I want to try to read it closer to her speed than I have been for the last couple of books. So I did go ahead and pick it up. I'm only 2 chapters in. I've only read 30 pages. But it is still good. I can't wait to get a little bit further in the story because there's so much good stuff that happens. But yeah, only 30 pages. So for next week, of course, this is my priority. Night in Silence is 100% my priority because, again, I would like to try to read closer to the same speed as my buddy. But I will probably also be sprinkling in little bits of Voyage of the Basilisk by Marie Brennan. So hopefully I'm in a headspace where I can actually pick this one up. But after that it's going to be an interesting thing because a lot of what I have picked out as possibilities for what I read after Voyage of the Basilisk are more historicals. I don't read a ton of historicals, so I tend to not read them back to back. So I don't know if I'm going to want to break after Voyage of the Basilisk. But if I don't, my hold for A Curious Beginning by Dina Rayburn has come in. And this is a historical historical mystery series that I've heard really, really good things about. And I'm very excited to get to. So hopefully it will be okay after I finish Voyage of the Basilisk. Or if I wanted to try something else historical, I do also have Anatomy, a Love Story by Jana Schwartz. This is one of those where either I'm going to love it and read to the end or I'm going to DNF it because it's a YA. I didn't know it was YA when I bought it, but we shall see how it goes. So this is also a possibility. I also have Over the Woodward Wall by A. Deborah Baker, which is a little bit out there from my usual tastes as well because it's more fairy tale, folk tale-ish and more middle grade. But it's very short. And so if I'm getting the feeling of I just want to knock something out and be done with it, I might pick up Over the Woodward Wall. And then y'all, so here's the thing. I told you that my holds came in for A Curious Beginning. So when it came in, I was just like, I'm going to go to the library and I'm just going to pick up this one hold item and I'm going to get out of the library and I'm not going to get anything else. And then I proceeded to get 4 more books. So didn't succeed at that at all. But Two of the books that I picked up were contemporary romances that were already on my TBR. I heard about both of them from BookTube. And the thing about BookTube romances for me personally is that there is a very strong possibility that I'm going to DNF them. So even if they look interesting, there's a strong possibility. So I picked up Love Con by Cerestia Glass and Battle Royal by Lucy Parker. If I like them and I continue to read the whole thing, it's going to be really great because it'll be like a nice rest and relaxation for my brain, because like romances tend to be really easy reads for me. But if I DNF them, then they're off of my TBR, which would be great. So these are also possibilities. But that is it. So if you have any thoughts or feelings about any of the books that I mentioned in this video, please leave me a comment down below, or you could always let me know what you are going to be reading next week. But that is it. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to, and until next time, have happy reading, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!